But from my perspective, if you really want to affect change, if you really want to make positive, lasting improvements to a dynamic and complicated system, you have to do that with cooperation. In order to get the cooperation, you have to have the communication. You can't be acting unilaterally.
All right, so let's get to know and meet Mike Perotti a little bit. Obviously, over 16 years at the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, he rose to the rank of major and then captain, working with, as he said, the two larger sheriffs in the area. He even has ties all the way back to David G. Not really a politician, but continued to work in law, going to the private sector, and obviously being an assistant state attorney here in Hillsborough County. So now going to face off against Andrew Warren in November. Talk a little bit about kind of like what has been your driving force, A, to get into law enforcement even to begin with?
Well, I appreciate that. I come from a family history legacy of serving the Hillsborough County community and law enforcement. I'm a third-generation Tampa native. I've never had any thought or desire of leaving Tampa, nor would I ever want to. This is my home, so I am truly a homegrown candidate. And I remind people that means that everything I say that I believe in and everything that I stand for and every assurance that I give is one that I got to live with for the rest of my life here in this community, because they'll know where to find me. But, growing up in a family that so much valued principles and service and protecting the people that you care about around you, although I first just went into the law practice and was a prosecutor and all that stuff, I really didn't think I had that desire to get back into law enforcement. I was going to be the one that got out of law enforcement. And I come to find out that DNA is apparently a pretty powerful thing. And so when the opportunity came early in my legal career to serve the sheriff's office as in-house counsel, I certainly jumped at that opportunity. That was after I had worked at the state attorney's office here locally. And that's a tremendous job, because you are able to see firsthand the hiring process, the training process, all of the efforts that the men and women carrying the badge out there go through, and try and help the sheriff make intelligent decisions, both responding to difficult situations, handling adverse events that have happened to try to find best outcomes, as well as trying to be part of the training process to help the men and women be better the next time it comes around. So that's been very rewarding for me. And has been the bulk of my 20 years in professional service. It was an unexpected and certainly highly unusual transition for me in 2010 when I was asked by Sheriff G, because I actually started under Sheriff Cal Henderson is when I first started here.
Oh wow!
But it was Sheriff G who asked me to consider leaving the legal side of things and going through the academy and becoming a fully sworn corrections officer, because he felt that I could provide some additional leadership guidance and assistance on the detention side of our operation. So being the yes, sir, do what you can to serve type person that I was raised to be, that's what I did. I went to the academy. I graduated number one in the class and was proud enough to be the class elected president of my corrections academy. And upon my graduation, I was immediately made a major and started trying my best to help be a positive and effective leader for the jail divisions here that had been through a few rough years in the late 2000s. And so I spent the next 6-7 years as a commander in multiple jail divisions over there. And I will tell you, you want to understand what's working well or not working well in our criminal justice system, go run a jail for a bit. You will see men and women in there that are not bad people. And I would actually say the majority of individuals in our jails aren't bad people. I will tell you a great number of them are either terrible decision makers or suffer from a litany of very, very unfortunate conditions, whether it's addictions, whether it's mental health. That's such a challenge for us right now as a community and across the nation and the world at large. But then you also see that there are actually truly bad actors there. There are individuals who, given the opportunity, do not respect the rule of law, do not respect the rights of others, do not respect the well-being and the lives of others, and they game the system. As much as there are some folks that are difficult to help in the criminal justice system, there are some folks that are absolutely taking advantage of it. And you got to see that to understand it. My opportunities being a major for those years, and then the last year and a half I was a colonel, and the colonel position at the sheriff's office is the highest ranking position you can have, other than the sheriff and chief deputy themselves. So from that position, the entire jail operation was under my command. So you're talking 1,600 employees and subcontractors and private contractors. So it's a pretty large operation with a multi-million-dollar budget, and you're running a small city at that point. And it was really that leadership opportunity that, had I only ever been an attorney, I would not know both the challenge, the difficulty, and yet how rewarding the opportunity to try and successfully lead others could be. And so as the new sheriff came in and I transitioned back to the legal staff here as part of Sheriff Chronister's new administration, I realized how much I enjoyed that, and looking around and listening to my coworkers and my friends and watching what was happening with some of the consequences and repercussions under the current administration at the state attorney's office, I said, I got to do this. It's the right thing. I can help this community, and go ahead and do it.
Let me jump in there and take you a little bit. I don't want to get too far removed from something that you said, but I want to really kind of, because I think it helps help me define your philosophy a little bit, because you really mentioned three populations of people, the poor decision makers, or the person that made a bad decision, who may not have a long resume of crime, or they do. They just can't seem to get out of that cycle, but they're not, say, malicious or not even, let's say, nonviolent crime. Then you get into like mental health, people that have addiction. They're in their own category. And then, of course, the bad actors. How do we parse out the three categories to try to service them all better? There's a lot of focus right now on mental health and addiction, maybe some funding, maybe some different programs. Bad actors are their own situation there, and then of course these decision makers are ones that this is the greatest population we think we can rehabilitate. Maybe look at lessening crimes, or you've served X amount of time, let's reduce. What are some of the things that you think we can do there?
Well, I think that the notion that there's a one size fits all, or that I can just start putting people into broad categories, is the gravest error one could make. Each single individual in each case has to rise and fall on its own merits. So while we absolutely need and must maintain the mental health diversion courts that have been set up in those efforts, the veterans diversion courts and those efforts have been set up, the drug treatment opportunities that are there, I believe that the danger is, in which you have to look out for, you've got to be very careful that you are utilizing those mechanisms and those resources for the appropriate and deserving individuals. There's far too great a risk and potential opportunity for individuals that, look, they don't have a drug problem, they don't have a mental health problem, they're a drug dealer. They are not out there because they just are bad decision makers. They are out there selling drugs, oftentimes are armed, and are doing so with full design, intent, and purpose, because there's supply and demand opportunity. So, my concern is in making sure that we provide resources and find alternative mechanisms to achieve intelligent justice in our system, that we are not doing so with so broad a brush that there are folks slipping through the cracks, and that, going back to one of our earlier conversations, I am very confident that some of the violence that we see an uptick in our local communities, with some of these shootings and many of them unresolved, by the way, the gun violence that we've got, that's not by chance. That those are some repeat offenders, known drug dealers, known individuals who that is their way of living out there, and they're being allowed at this point to operate with some impunity, because they get in, they get arrested, and there's not any real sanctions with any teeth being levied on them in some instances, and that's dangerous. But I think that you have to be very flexible when you're talking about what's the appropriate sentence on this case. And I think in all of them, having a very keen eye to the specific, both past history of this accused individual, as well as the nature of what they did on this event, taking that all into account, but always with huge consideration of the needs of a victim in a case. And I can't emphasize that enough. Our justice system must be attuned to making victims whole, to protecting the next victim if we can. And so I would certainly make it you want to talk about a top line priority of my office, is ensuring that there is significant, constant outreach and involvement to the victims. Hey, I'm not just giving you an email, there's a court date coming up. We're not talking about I'm going to notify you when the sentence is done and the person's about to get released. I'm talking about meaningful dialogue and explanation between the assistant state attorneys that are prosecuting the cases and the victims involved in that case, so that those victims have a realistic and significant understanding and comprehension of what's going on, what the potential is, where it could go wrong, what we're shooting for. If there's a property loss or a cost, an out-of-pocket expense that the victim incurred, I want restitution. I want the sentenced individual having the opportunity, if it's permissible, to maintain their employment so that they can get the restitution back to the individual. I mean, those are all the factors that have to be weighed out, and there is no one-size-fits-all. It is case by case, best outcomes, best opportunities for everybody involved, but the center of that equation has to be the interest of the victims.
Absolutely great stuff. Mike Perotti, we got a chance to get to know him a little bit. We'll put links.
Thank you for your time. This is going to be a very important election here. Obviously, a lot's at stake, and my only hope for everybody is do your homework. Don't again. You've heard me say don't paint with broad brushstrokes. I don't care what the candidate party they are or anything like that. Folks, just do your homework. Try to judge the authenticity and the real message of the folks, who's willing to stand out there and lead by example and lead from the front. And by finding those leaders wherever they are, that is how we're going to finally get to the type of community that we all talk about and want. And I wish everybody to have a safe and happy rest of this week, and look forward to seeing you out there at the polls in November. Please consider Mike Perotti for State Attorney 2020 in Hillsborough County.